Hey, good evening.
Hey, how you doing, Brian? Nice
Doing
to
all right.
see
How
you.
are you?
I'm good, man. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man. Let me tell you a little behind the scenes here of the podcast for the listeners and for you, Brian. So when you sent me over a request to do the podcast, you sent me a bunch of information. I looked at it briefly because I like to do my own research, right, for the guests. I like to have little bit of back
Sure.
a little bit of background, but not much. I'm gonna do my own research. So today I was looking through this morning, and I had 4 pages of notes. I was like, this guy is interesting. And then I realized there's another Brian Livingston who works like doctor things.
Uh-oh.
And I was like, what's going on? So like 6 o'clock today, just a couple hours ago, I had to redo my notes. And I was like, man. But but I enjoy, and that's when I was like, okay, let me go back to the notes and actually be respectful and realize who this guy is. So I guess let's just go right into the meat of the pie. Kind of explain yourself, kind of quickly before we jump into the full root of the context of the podcast.
Yeah. So I'm Brian Livingston. I'm the author of The Habits of Squirrels. Born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and then went to Clemson University. Earned my BA in history. After that, I thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail as a part of sort of a gap year with some other travel, sort of sprinkled in there. Got my law degree from Washington and Lee University School of Law in Lexington, Virginia. Came back to South Carolina, which is sort of where all my family ended up. I was a prosecutor for 2.5 years, and then I did insurance defense for 3 years. Then stepped away from law to try and get outdoors more and do some stuff that had just a little more free time and allowed for sort of focusing on the book. And yeah, I started a job at REI this week, actually.
So through hiked. What exactly does the definition of through hiked mean instead of just hiked the Appalachian?
So the through hike term is sort of loose now, and it gets looser each year. It used to traditionally mean like you started at one end of the Appalachian Trail, either in Maine or in Georgia, and then just walked in a straight line, to more or less to the other end, without any significant stoppage. I think the sort of rule of thumb is that you had to do it all in a calendar year, which would allow for some stoppage. But now, people are doing it differently, and they're starting to want to hit stuff at better times of the year, avoid heat, avoid cold, see stuff when it's blooming. So the term's been expanded to include stuff like that, where it's all done in a calendar year, but it's not done in a straight line.
Right. So your hike nickname is Mr. Frodo, and I saw that's because you're short
Yeah.
and you're hairy. So there, but here's my question: Is does everybody have to have a hike nickname? Is that kind of like standard?
It's standard. Not everybody has one. You meet people that just nothing ever happened, but usually just either like weird stuff happens on trail, or you say something weird, and all of a sudden that'll be your name. Uh, like one guy I hiked with, he ordered flapjacks at a restaurant that was in a meadow, and people just called him Meadow Flapjack from then on. But then you meet people, hikers that have been going for a long time, sort of past the point where people usually have their nicknames, and you're still calling them, Steve or Chris. So it's just it's a fun way to do it. It's fun to go by a different name. I certainly love being called Mr. Frodo.
Right. And with Mr. Frodo, obviously that's a play on Lord of the Rings. You got a
Yep.
ring, a cheap ring, and you wore it halfway through, and then you got in a hotel, took a shower, took it off, and you kind of lost it, and never put it back on. Is that right?
Yeah, man, you have done your research. I yeah, I took it off to take a shower, and then sort of realized on the train out of town that I'd left it there, so I did not complete my quest.
But was that when you realize you lost it, is it kind of like a good luck charm or like a oh my god, if I don't wear this, I'm not gonna have a good hike type of thing, or was it just kind of you were just doing it for a joke, so it didn't matter either way?
It was a pretty tough moment. It's hard to say that it was too hard because like I could have just turned, gotten off at the train station and gone back into Brooklyn and re-got it. It was disappointing, but measuredly so because I wasn't. I don't remember being super worried about the rest of the hike going awry. I did catch a lot of flack for losing it because everybody knew me as Mr. Frodo, and at that point they knew that I carried a ring, so people would ask to see the ring, and like, yeah, I lost it.
Right. So before you were Mr. Frodo, you were just Brian Livingston. I kind of want to know who Brian Livingston was before Mr. Frodo because I know that your brother-in-law was the one that hiked first and then it somewhat inspired you after school. But I want to know before you even thought about hiking, what was your main goal in life at I don't know, 13, 14, 15?
Oh man. Fortunately enough, writing was sort of always on my radar. I always read a lot and always sort of had an idea to be an author. Um, and then 13, 14, 15. I don't know. I think I probably still thought I was gonna be like a rock god or something, doing something, getting on stage and playing guitar, even though I didn't pick up guitar until much later. When I set off to hike the trail, I was already into law school, had accepted an offer from Washington and Lee, so that journey was already sort of underway. So yeah, I kind of, at least at the beginning of the trail, I was already, Brian Livingston from the suburbs of Atlanta, setting off to law school.
Why law school? What in your spirit called, why did law school call you? I guess is a better way to ask it.
Yeah. Man, that's a good question. I was a history major at Clemson. I'm not entirely sure, what sort of led me to do that. And then, I didn't want to be a history teacher. I didn't want to be a historian. Um, and I just needed another step. And then so, started looking at law school, and I had in mind that I was going to get into environmental law and go in and sort of save the world. And then, as law school progresses, you sort of realize that those sort of jobs are few and far between. So just never really ended up in environmental law. And, that's probably part of the reason why I'm out of it now.
So I am always fascinated with lawyers, law school. Like, I'm 24, so like I've always wanted to be a lawyer of some type, just because. And for some weird reason, man, I know a lot about law that I shouldn't know. Just for some god awful, I just study it for no apparent reason. So, what kind of was your uh, talk to me about the insurance defense being an insurance defense attorney. What did that handle on what side?
So I worked at two firms. The first firm I worked at was a little bigger, and it was a lot of car wrecks, like defending car wrecks. I'm not sure how it is in Mississippi, but you see the plaintiffs attorneys with the billboards and stuff like that. We were usually on the other side of the cases from them. You're paid and sort of retained by the insurance company, and then but you're actually representing the driver of the car. And then for the second firm I was at, it was still insurance defense, but it was more like construction company insurance. So we were involved in a lot of condo cases and stuff when construction companies or contractors or whoever was getting sued over something about a condo building construction. um, we would end up getting involved on behalf of the insurance company.
So that's very interesting. You mentioned the billboards, and that kind of wants to. I want to lead that to my next question. Down here, I don't know how it is over there. We have these weird catchphrases. Everybody, like lawyers, are like, "If you've been in a wreck, just call me in a sec," or something like that. Was there any weird billboards,
Yeah.
sayings up there like that?
Yeah, it's the big one is an Astapula law firm, and it's Don't Scream, Call Akeem, which is a Akeem and Astapula. And then there's the George Sink one. I don't know. It's a big firm, but I don't know if they have a catchphrase or if they he was a Marine, and every billboard's a picture of him back in his Marine days.
Uh,
And then like a couple of little jingles and stuff for other firms. I can't remember. Oh, there's a guy, he has his last name Dill, and it's in a pickle called Dill. I,
right.
I
That's a
liked him. I
good
like
one.
that
That's a
one.
good one. We
Yeah.
have one here.
Yeah. They
We
were
have
born to do it.
we've got one here, man, and it is it's a big catch on sexual innuendo. It's his name is Morris Bart, and it's called "One Call, That's All." And it's like, really? But it catches your eye when you realize one
Yeah.
call, that's all. You're like, really, man? Come on. So,
Yeah. There's a different firm, but there was a guy in Atlanta when I was growing up. That was his big slogan. One call, that's all.
I find them so funny because I don't think I guess I could be if I sat and thought about it. Like, what would be a good tagline or catchphrase for Brian Livingston?
I don't know. This doesn't translate super well to the podcast world, but growing up in Atlanta, there was a billboard, and it was mybaldlawyer.com, and it had a picture of
Ah,
a bald lawyer. So like that, I figured I could do that because I'm bald. But
yeah, you got
I don't
some hair
know.
action going.
Yeah, I got a little bit, but yeah, I could make it work. I could trim it down.
Have you ever thought about
Um,
Have you ever thought about just straight just shaving it all off? Or are you scared like
yeah, I do
because I
that.
have an uncle that has hair like that, like it's just barely coming in, but they're scared to shave it because they're like, if it shaves it and it doesn't come back, then I'm just screwed.
Yeah, especially during COVID when I, just started cutting my own hair. Just run a razor over it, and it's so much easier if you just do it without the guard and just do it at the lowest level. So that's pretty much how I do it. Every maybe 4 or 5 weeks, just sort of run a razor over it. So that's pretty much just how I do it. Then just let it grow back to sort of what you're looking at now.
What's one picture or item that you have in your house that you like? If you're gonna show off, this is the one you're gonna show off.
Oh man, I don't know. Um, It probably depends who's over. I'm a big Widespread Panic fan, so I've collected some cool posters over the years. Probably if a music fan or another hippie was over, I'd probably show them one of those. Um, I always try and work people over. I have a couple Appalachian Trail maps that are around. You know, try and highlight that because that's always fun to talk about. Or since I'm sitting next to a Braves world champion clipping, maybe work over towards that too because that was a fun process.
Yeah, man. As you can tell, I'm a big music nerd. I got that right here is the original. I got it graded. It's the original 1969 Woodstock poster. It's one from the actual event. Here, I've got a
Yeah, cool.
I've got an Eric Singer from Kiss signed drumhead, and I this podcast was built on music, but then it sort of kind of generated into an everything podcast, like because I love talking about everything. Some stuff I don't know about, like hiking. I am a fat ass kid that I don't hike, man. I don't do any of that stuff. So was hiking big in Atlanta? Because I know it depends on what part of Atlanta you grew up in. Because there's some that's suburbs and there's some that's just middle of nowhere.
um, I definitely didn't come from a hiking family. Uh, it depends what you call hiking. There was a national forest sort of near where I was growing up because I grew up sort of in Marietta, which is like northwest and starts to sort of get into the foothills. And we would go and just like hang out there and like wander around, but I don't think we ever said that like we were going on a hike today. We were just, going to get outside or go fish. I really never started like backpacking or doing the overnight thing until really the Appalachian Trail and taking some like preparation hikes just to sort of learn how to put up a tent, learn how to pack a pack and, use the stove and all that. I think hiking's gotten bigger in Atlanta and then just bigger in general. But I don't remember having any friends or family growing up that hiked or backpacked with any regularity or as a part of sort of their regular vacation.
Man, you want to torture me? Just say the words "we're going camping," and I will come. I will come live. I don't know what it is, man. It's the bugs, the mosquitoes. It's hot.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the damn air ain't gonna work in the camper. It's rough.
Yeah. You said you're in Mississippi, right?
Mississippi, yeah, man.
Yeah. I mean, now I live in Charleston, South Carolina. Now it's just too hot and too buggy to go camping around here for eight, 9 months of the year. It's just not a fun experience.
And then you don't want to go when it's cold because it's too cold.
Yeah.
Like it's like there
Yeah.
is never, and I'm sure it's like that in South Carolina, there is never perfect weather. It's either when it's perfect, it rains. Like when it's just a cool breeze, then it rains, and then you're like, well, damn, that screws my whole day up.
Yep. Yeah. That's pretty much it. It's either hot, raining, or cold.
To a T. So if you ever want to
Yeah.
come, just know pick which season you want to come in: the hot season, the rainy season, or the cold season. That's the only three we
Yep.
got. So,
Yep.
man, I want to know about this book, The Habits of Squirrels, which I haven't read it yet. I'm excited to get my copy when I get it. Uh, it's a non it's a fiction, not true. So I wonder when you're writing this, are you kind of putting your experience traveling through the Appalachian in the book, kind of giving it a little bit of realness factor?
Yeah, so I really set out to really like capture the experience of a through hike and sort of like what it meant to me and like why I enjoyed it and the aspects of it that were so awesome. And then like it took a long time to write. I think it like 3.5 years between first putting sort of pen to paper, then final product. So, I would start off like when I first would write a scene, it'd be pretty much directly from my through hike experience. And then just as I spent more time with it and sort of learned more about the characters and sort of built the world a little bit, that scene would transform into something else and sort of take its own life. But yeah, everything, I'm pretty comfortable saying this, everything has its original origin in something that happened to me or something maybe that I heard some happen to somebody else or something that I read about. And then grew from there. So it may not end up resembling, kind of that initial inspiration.
Now, I want to say something, and it's going to lead to a question. Um, I was reading, I think I may have been reading Bear Grylls' book, and he was talking about when he was in the military and their feet would get wet, they would have to constantly change their socks because if you didn't, the whole bottom part of your foot would come off in a giant blister. And so I wonder, were there any type of things that you like searched out before you went? Like what's the right boot to wear? What's the right socks? What's the right anything? Or was it kind of just learn as you go?
I should have done more research.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that like my brother-in-law had done it in the past, so I talked to him and got a lot of information from him. But a lot of my stuff was sort of learning as I went. He did tell me, no cotton, no
Really?
none of the stuff or like nothing that's gonna hold water. So like I was out there, I had wool socks from the start, which was big, and that yeah, merino wool for pretty much the entire trail, which I would recommend and wear again if I was to do it again. But then, I was out there with like a slumberjack sleeping bag that was meant for, like sleepovers. That was one of my older sister's sleeping bags. And like other just blatant mistakes like that cost me from, day one until I learned and got rid of it.
Wool socks. Why those? Like what's the
Uh They they're pretty durable. They wear like they're very comfortable, they're very soft. I guess they're blister resistant in some way. And I would have never thought this, but they don't seem to hold water. So, they're not gonna, like you were talking about, they're not gonna hold water against the bottom of your foot and make the whole thing fall off.
But they're not hot. Like I would think wool would be hot. Like
Yeah, no, that part of it's no fun. They
okay,
are hot, and yeah, I
okay,
don't wear them around Charleston anymore. But
right.
yeah, especially in the colder months when you're hiking, they're really nice.
So when you're hiking the Appalachian Trail, are you? Is it? Do you now? Okay, because I have thoughts about this. When you're truly hiking the entire trail from beginning to end, are you allowed in the hiker's term to stop at hotels and sleep at hotels, or like do you have to constantly hike and be like an actual camper till you finish the journey?
Oh yeah, stopping at hotels, that's like one of the joyous experiences of
Okay,
hiking. Yeah,
okay.
it's like a through hike's really like a series of four or five night hikes. Every 4 or 5 nights you're in a hotel or in a hostel or in something indoors where you're showering, getting, going into a gas station or a grocery store and getting more food and doing all that. And then, once you're clean and happy and, somewhat well rested, you get back in and go back into the woods and start stinking again.
Whenever I hear of people hiking, it reminds me of that Reese Witherspoon movie, Wild. You ever watch that where she like
Yeah.
walks from and like she goes and sends these and receives these packages for like they're like, okay, in 6.7 days, you're gonna be at mile 196. You need to have this package exactly at 3:30 because we're gonna be there. Like, is that like a legit thing?
It's yeah, so I read that book like right before I started hiking, and it may
Okay.
have been where I got the idea, but like I bulk ordered a bunch of like Snickers marathon bars. So I had like 200 at my parents' house. And then I told my mom, like my mom and I would communicate and be like, okay, in 2 days I'll be so and so. If you'll send them to that post office, I'll go and pick them up. So they're
Ah,
still part
gotcha.
of that. Still, even with that, the majority of my food was stuff I bought along the way. Um, I think just with like the way the world's growing, I think the shipping yourself food is sort of dying. Um, and just as all parts of the trails sort of become more accessible. But I may be talking out of turn because she was on the Pacific Crest, I think, which may still be fairly remote.
Have you ever thought about like one of those 127-hour incidents happening where the guy falls through the canvas and the rock crushes his arm and he's stuck there for 6.5 days? That would literally scare the shit out of me, man. Like because
Yeah,
I cannot imagine having to cut my own arm off. I don't think. Well, I say that until I'm in the situation. I don't think I would be able to do it. But if I'm in like the situation where tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. you're going to be effing dead if you don't cut your arm off, then maybe that's a different story. But have you ever thought anything like that would happen? Which you don't want it to, but it has to be in the back of your mind every time you leave.
yeah. So there's a fair number of people on the Appalachian Trail. So I think um, somebody would come by unless you really put yourself in a bad way.
Okay.
But I do remember having those thoughts, especially like, yeah, but you walk that far through the mountains, you have a couple scary falls and sort of near misses. And each time, especially when you're like 2 or 3 days out of a town on either side, you you fall, you look at yourself and make sure you're okay. And you're like, okay. So like if I had broken my ankle here, or if I had gotten trapped here and nobody came by, I guess I just wait and just like hope somebody comes by, or I just, if I'm stuck, start thinking about gnawing through something and trying to get back to the world.
Well, if you break your ankle, you're pretty much a 99% survival rate because you can move, you can do everything.
Yeah,
You just can't walk on your ankle. So I would be, but it would be, I'm scared to death of everything. So like if I'm sitting there at night and I know I know I can't move and I'd be scared it'd be cougars or a damn monkey with the monkey pox or something happening coming towards me, I'd be freaking out. So, kind of, how are you keeping yourself sane in these situations? Like, what are you doing to, you know, rid time? Are you talking to people? Are you listening to audiobooks, music? How are you doing it?
The nights can be tough. The stormy nights are no fun because they're really like you're sitting there looking at your thin tent walls and you're like, well, like if this storm really goes and it knocks down one of these trees, it's just gonna squish me. There's just
Yeah.
nothing to be done about it. I don't know that I did a very good job keeping myself sane during those sort of things. Um, for just like the day-to-day stuff, yeah, I mean, just mixing up your routine a little bit. The mosquitoes got real bad once like it got real hot, like late June. And instead of just listening to mosquitoes all day and slowly losing my mind, that's when I started to put in headphones and listen to music and do stuff like that. I only camped alone 6 nights. I think I was out there like 144 nights. So like every other night, I was with people, talking to people, sort of decompressing at the end of the day. And yeah, I mean, just finding little things to get out of your head, especially if you're scared of something or worried about something. Just saying stuff out loud and talking to people really becomes a blessing out there.
What was your starting weight when you started versus what it was when you were done? You said you're 100 and something days out there.
Yeah. When I started, I was probably about 185. I think I pretty quickly got down to like 170, and then my legs started packing on muscle, so I got back up to 185 because that was something that I was interested to see. Because wanted to see how much weight I could lose, and then I don't want to say excited, but I was interested when I got in, maybe a month in and saw that I had lost like 15 pounds already. And then I was interested to see where that goes. And then my weight, oddly enough, started to come back up.
The book, The Habits of Squirrels, is available now. Where does inspiration for the title come from?
Yeah, so the squirrels do play a pretty large role in the book and just
Okay.
sort of driving forward. There's no like named squirrel characters or anything like that, but they're involved in several big incidents throughout the book that sort of drive the plot forward. And then it's just a phrase I came across when I was editing the book. Uh, I have a style book that gave us an example, like you wouldn't say squirrels' habits, you would say the habits of squirrels when you're talking about possessive or species or something. And I was editing, I was pretty deep into the process. I did not have a title yet, and I read that, and I was like, well, that really just seems to fit. And it was just kind of one of those aha moments, and I never looked back from it.
When you're out there and you're in the midst of the woods and you're obviously you see animals, squirrels, birds, all these types of things, you must have realized that you must have looked at these animals different than what you looked at them before, sitting on a park bench or anything, because you're in their territory now.
Yeah, and you notice different things about different animals in different places. The deer in the very popular parks respond to you differently than like the deer that you catch out in the middle of nowhere. And same with the squirrels and same the way down. Yeah, it's fun, man. You hike for a while and then you come across the squirrel and you just sort of watch it do its weird little morning routine, and then you move on and maybe you catch like a grouse or a pheasant and watch it do its weird thing. It's an interesting way to come across animals.
That reminds me of, when I've my family loves going to Tennessee. We've been to Tennessee multiple times, and there's this place called Cades Cove down certain part of Tennessee down by Pigeon Forge. And it's phenomenal. It's like a trail that you drive through and you see all these animals. You see bears and deer. And you're right. These animals are used to seeing thousands of people a day, so they're not scared to come out and eat a tree that's 15 feet from a car. And it's different versus uh, my backyard. You see deer all the time, but they hear the back door open and they skid out, they run because they're
Yeah.
it's crazy to when you really do dumb it down and you're like, wow, the habits of animals in certain places is crazily different.
Yeah, I was walking over a bridge in an apartment complex just today, and like all the turtles come from out of the woodwork to the bridge when they see you crossing because they think you're gonna throw them some bread or grape peels or whatever you're supposed to feed turtles now. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny to think of them learning that habit.
So you mentioned earlier that as we kind of wind down here, what was it like? Because there's this saying that you can start something at 20, fail at 25, start again at 30, but also fail at 60 and restart at 70. So you've kind of done that. You've kind of restarted. You went from being an attorney to now you're writing stuff. What's it like to restart at such, uh, when you're dead into something? I don't really know how to ask the question, but
Yeah, no, I got you. It's highs and lows. It's really exciting to work on a book for that long and then put it out into the world. I've been lucky enough to get some good reviews and mostly good feedback on that, which is like a very gratifying and just a unique feeling that just hadn't experienced elsewhere. And then really you can have some long nights where you think like, man, I really invested a lot in this law career, and all my friends from law school are going on, and I'm far enough out where some of them are starting to become partners, some of them are moving in house, all these like interesting and fun things that they're moving on to do, and I've just fully hit the ripcord on that. And you know I'm glad to be working at REI now, but like for a while there you're like, I don't know where this path leads me. I don't know. I left a place of pretty good comfort where I'd really put a lot of effort to establish myself, and now I'm sort of on my own. So it's highs and lows, man. It's exciting and it's really fun and can be really interesting and challenging, and then it can just be really dark and lonely.
you mentioned REI a couple of times. What's that?
It's a big outfitter. It's
Okay.
one of those like huge outfitters. It's got stores sort of across the country that take up like a city block, but it focuses on hiking gear, camping gear, fishing gear, just stuff getting people outside.
So what are you doing for them? Are you like a sponsoree or are you just working for them? Just a regular job?
They're opening a store near Charleston, not in Charleston proper, and helping them open that store, and then staying on as an operations lead.
Got you. Congratulations on that, man.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
couple more questions here as we wind down. You published the Habits of Squirrels by yourself, so you're self-published. Kind of what? And here's a crazy thing. I was talking to a 14-year-old here a couple of hours ago before you, and she was talking about how I was mentioning that I had written a book and I was going to get it published, and all these they were like, okay, you have to have like $3,000 up front before we can start printing it. And she was like, that's not how self-publishing works. You don't really have to pay that much. If you are, you're getting scammed or something. So I want to know, how did you self-publish your book? What did it cost? How can others go upon self-publishing their works?
First, I'll do my plug for readsy.com. It's sort of
Sure.
like a Craigslist for the self-publishing community. It has editors, graphic designers to do your cover, and then just a lot of like marketing and all sorts of good advice. That's you can pay for it or get some of it for free. Um, I uh, I paid for an editor. I paid for a professional editor to sort of help me get the book together and sort of do some developmental stuff. I got a graphic designer to help do the cover. I think all that together was about 3 grand, and then I self-publish on Amazon, which is free. And then for wider distribution, because like independent bookstores and all that won't mess with Amazon, I did Ingram Spark, which is like $25 to submit your manuscript digitally, and then for a paperback. The process got kind of expensive, but not from Amazon or Ingram Spark, not from any of the the actual publishers.
So when you sit down to write this book, I've heard lots of people just say it's writing a book is a nightmare. But then other times you're like, writing a book is therapy. So what was it for you? Was it a nightmare? Was it therapy, or was it both?
It was both. Some days it's really fun and you're working out some stuff and like you're excited to see what your characters are doing that day and you sort of have an idea for them or you thought of something, kind of funny that can happen and it's just really fun to take like a good idea from your mind and put it onto the page or the screen. And then a lot of times it's a nightmare where you sit down and it's just the last thing that you want to do is sit there at the computer for 2 hours in the morning before work and try and figure out what this, my protagonist is a retired mailman, fired, try and figure out what this guy's going to do with himself in the woods that day. And just to sit there and, type something that sucks and that is not going to make the final draft, but you want to put something out that day. So I mean, it ranges, and it can make you hit your head against the wall some days, and then some days it's really quite pleasant and fun.
I saw on your bio that that you were married and you have a chocolate lab. So I wonder, have you ever thought about taking the wife and the dog out on the Appalachian Trail and doing it again as a family?
Oh man, I would love to. My wife does hike and she'll do backpacking with me, but I think she's set her limit at 2 nights in between showering. The dog, unfortunately, is about 8 now, and he
Ah,
actually just tore his ACL, so he's
ooh.
probably past that age and then past that physical condition. But that was he when I got him, I knew that I wanted to hike with him because I got him like a year after I through hiked, and we got some nights in on the Appalachian Trail, and then a lot of other good hikes and a lot of good camping experiences in, and hopefully a couple more in the future.
Well, Brian, look, I appreciate you reaching out. I appreciate you doing the podcast, and I can't wait to read the book. I think I'm going to have a blast reading it. But thank you for coming on. So I've kept you for about 40 minutes. So what I want you to do is, for as long as you need to, I want you to plug anything you want to plug, any social media where you can get the book, anything like that. I want you to plug. Take as much time as you need to.
All right, yeah. So just quick synopsis of the book, The Habits of Squirrels. It's a fictionalized account of a through hike. Takes place on the Great Eastern Trail, which is a fictional trail. Follows Gabe Jenkins, a recently retired mailman who uses the through hike to sort of reassess how he spent his life, how he's handled himself as a father and a wife, and or a father and a husband, and how he wants to spend his remaining years. And it's highlighted by sort of the eccentric characters that you meet on a through hike, and then obviously when you're hiking through the mountains, the awesome landscapes. And if you want to see or learn more about me, you can visit my website, brianlivingstonbooks.com. You can also buy my book there. You can buy my book through your local independent bookstore. It may not be on the rack there, but if you go to their website, they all back up to indiebound.org, which has the Habits of Squirrels available. And then you can buy it on Barnes and Noble, Amazon, all the sort of boring places. And then I'm available on social media. Um, Instagram is at Brian Livingston Books. Twitter is at Livingston Books. And then Facebook is author Brian Livingston. And I'm doing a book tour in October. And you can come see me there. I'll be in Marion, Virginia on October 7th at Marion Outdoors. I'll be at Walkabout Outfitters in Lexington, Virginia on October 19th. I'll be in Winchester, Virginia at the Winchester Book Gallery on the 22nd. I'll be at M. Judson Booksellers in Greenville, South Carolina on October 25th. And then it all sort of culminates in the Louisville Book Festival in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm trying to learn to say that right. October 28th and 29th.
Well, what I want you to do is before we jump off here, you're going to Louisville, Kentucky. I want you to check out my guys over at Dano Seasoning, man. They are,
All
I
right.
don't know if you've ever had their seasoning, but their seasoning literally changed my life. So a shameless plug for the
All right.
sponsor here.
Of course.
Go
Is
over.
that a barbecue seasoning or like a steak seasoning, or they
It's an
run the gamut?
it's an everything seasoning. I
Okay, cool.
literally, I will literally put that stuff on my popcorn. Like I brought it. I went and saw Top Gun Maverick and Elvis. Two the like I went and saw one night, and then the next I went and saw the other, and I brought the seasoning with me and put it into popcorn, and people were looking at me like I was nuts, dude. They're like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah,
but
that's a good sell. I'll check that out as soon as we get off.
but Brian, man, thank you for joining me on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed our chat, and I know this is going to be the worst podcast you've ever going to be on, the worst interview you'll have. So you have that to put down your
Oh, that's
schedule.
not true. Yeah,
uh,
man. No, I really appreciate you having me on. It's always fun to chat.
all right, man. You have a good night, man. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.